Please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today our first group, will be presenting on the first question regarding criminal intimidation between public prosecutor against Azhar. So, okay, this is our group members. Next.
Okay, kelas. Bagus lah. Oh. The firm, yeah. And also the prosecutor. Siapa yang jadi prosecution counsel ni? Siapa jadi DPP, siapa jadi lawyer? Okay. I'm just joking. Never mind. Just proceed with your presentation. Okay.
All right.
Proceed with your presentation, please.
Okay. First of all, I would like to clarify that the first presenter couldn't present in live, but she's here. So she prepared the video recording for her presentation. So let us begin.
Never mind. Just present with whatever you have. No problem. Okay. Wow. Tak dengar. No sound.
Sekejap tuan, saya share balik.
Okay.
So before we discuss on the answer to the questions in details, let me summarize first on what happened in this case. So this case actually involved a dispute between Azhar, who is a government pensioner, and Ah Chong, who is a retired police officer. Both of them are neighbors, but their relationship was not very good, although they lived next door for over 10 years. So one day, Azhar made a loud noise on his Harley-Davidson motorcycle at about 10 p.m., and this has disturbed the peace of Ah Chong and his family. And then Ah Chong came out of his house and scolded Azhar with the words, "Hey Azhar, jangan memekak malam-malam boleh tak?" And this has led to the verbal argument between Azhar and Ah Chong, which resulted Azhar to come out from his house and standing outside the fence of Ah Chong's house while carrying a hanger, and he said, "Kau jangan cakap lebih-lebih ya, nanti aku belasah kau baru tahu tinggi rendahnya langit." And at the same time, Ah Chong had CCTV outside his house, which recorded all the Azhar's actions. Okay, let's proceed with the first question, which is, do you think prosecution can prove prima facie case against Azhar? The issue in this question is whether the prosecution can prove a prima facie case against Azhar for criminal intimidation under Section 503 of the Penal Code, which is punishable under Section 506 of the Penal Code. So before that, it is important to know what prima facie case is, and this is provided under Section 180 subsection 4 of the Criminal Procedure Code, which provides a prima facie case is made out against the accused if the prosecution has adduced credible evidence proving each ingredient of the offense, and if it is unrebutted or unexplained, it will amount to a conviction. And then Section 503 of the Penal Code defines what is criminal intimidation. It is when whoever threatens another with any injury to his person, reputation, or property, or to the person or reputation of anyone in whom that person is interested with the intention to cause alarm to that person or to cause that person to do any act which he is not legally bound to do, or to omit to do any act which he is not legally entitled to do, as the means of avoiding of execution of such threat. So he is committing a criminal intimidation, and the punishment of this offence is provided under section 506 of the Penal Code, which is the imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years, or with fine, or with both. And if the threat is to cause death or grievous hurt, then the punishment is imprisonment for a term may extend to 7 years, or to impute unchastity to a woman shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 7 years, or with fine, or both. So section 506 actually reveals that there are two sets or two limbs of intimidation, namely simple intimidation and serious intimidation, where serious intimidation carries a heavier sentence. Furthermore, the principle of criminal intimidation also can be found in the case of Utayakumar anak lelaki Ponusami against public prosecutor in 2003, where the court held that there are two elements to be fulfilled in order to establish criminal intimidation. So for the first element is actus reus, where the accused must have communicated the threat to injure a person's reputation or property. And if the threat is not communicated, then there is no criminal intimidation. Then the second element is mens rea, where the accused must have intention to induce or to influence the mind of the victim to do or to refrain from doing something, or omit to do something, or to cause alarm. And then from the previous case and section 503, it can be concluded that there are three requirements to prove criminal intimidation. The first requirement is the offence must be done with intent to cause alarm, which is the mens rea. Secondly, a threat must be communicated or uttered to the person threatened, which is actus reus. And lastly, the accused was capable of carrying out the threat, which is actus reus. So the first requirement is the offence must be done with intent to cause alarm to that person, or to cause that person to do something which he is not legally bound to do, which is mens rea. So to illustrate, in the case of Jogendra Kumar against Hem Chandran in 1964, in this case, the accused who gave a threat to kill and bury the complainant was proven to have not caused any criminal intimidation. This is due to the reason that the threat was given by a 74-year-old sick man, which in fact not caused any alarm to other witnesses who came to see him together with the complainant. However, in contrast to the case of public prosecutor against Aziz bin Wee in 1974, where in this case, the accused has picked up the dangerous weapon, which is knife, and shouted, "Try if you want to get it," as the staff of the Ministry of Health was trying to remove his goods because he has no license to operate a food stall. So the court in this case held that anyone who had faced with the accused while holding the knife close to him must have been gravely alarmed, and the court held that the accused was guilty for criminal intimidation. Lastly, by applying all the authorities to this issue, it can be said that Azhar has intention to cause alarm to Ah Chong. This is based on the fact that following Azhar's threat to belasa Ah Chong, he subsequently made a police report. So this situation clearly shows that he has a reasonable fear for his safety and belief that Azhar will carry out the threat. Secondly, when Azhar coming out of his house and standing outside the fence of Ah Chong's house while carrying a hanger, so his action has made Ah Chong frightened that he will be hurt. And lastly, even though we think that the cloth hanger seems to be harmless or undangerous, the word belasa uttered by Azhar does not require any weapon in order to carry out the threat to alarm the victim. So in conclusion, the first requirement has been fulfilled as the threat was done with the intention to cause alarm to Ah Chong.
All right, I will proceed to the second requirement, which is a threat must be communicated or uttered with the intention of its being communicated to the person threatened for the purpose of influencing his mind. So the first case that we refer is Amir Akbar and Abdul Hamid, where the court ruled that it was reasonable to complain to regard the words uttered that said, "I will come and assault you, watch out." Because as the word, there is no reason to think that it was an anti-talk. So, and also the court also further provided that obviously the word "I will assault you" were uttered with like sharing a joke. So such word does not constitute a threat because the circumstance is on the that's like a joke. Right, next. The other case is Chua Siulit and against public prosecutor, where the fact of the case it was found that the appellant was unhappy with the victim, a domestic maid employed by the appellant for neglecting to cook dinner, and the appellant placed a kitchen knife against the victim's chest and stomach and asking her, "Can you wake up?" It was argued that the words "wake up" would not amount to a threat of criminal intimidation. So the court held that there was nothing in section 503 that required a threat to be ascertained solely from the words used. So we can see that the court tried to interpret the word threat. It depends on this case. The other case will be different to the other case. Next, to apply back to the case, Azhar has indeed communicated the threat towards Achong. It is because we can see from when Azhar coming out of his house and standing outside the fence of Achong's house, carrying a closest hanger, while saying, "Kau jangan cakap lebih-lebih ya, nanti aku belasah, kau baru kau tahu tinggi rendahnya langit." So the word belasah is a word that constitutes a threat because it is not a joke. And also they had a verbal argument before the incident as a result of Azhar make a loud noise, and we refer back to Amir Akbar case where the court stated that the words uttered is when the words uttered is not a joke, so it constitutes a threat. All right, next. Okay, the last requirement is the accused was capable of carrying out the threat. So we refer to the case of Lee Yok Chong against public prosecutor, where the accused gave the victim two choices, which are to withdraw a police report lodged against the accused, or else acid would be thrown on the victim to blind him. So the court held in this case that if there was no weapon present, it was still sufficient to charge the accused with the offence of criminal intimidation, similar to the case of Sina Sami and Alaki Kaliapai against public prosecutor, where the accused had used a parang to hit the metal gate of the house and threatened the complainant to pay a sum of 50,000 ringgit in 5 days. So the court held that it is not essential that a weapon must be produced in order to sustain a charge under section 503 of Penal Code, because mere words would suffice to constitute a criminal intimidation. So as a conclusion for this first question, before that, to apply back for the third requirement, Azhar is capable to carry out the threat towards Achong, even though there was no weapon that give harm to Achong. So it is still sufficient to charge Azhar with the offence of criminal intimidation, because under section 503 does not mention clearly that the weapon must be produced before the court. This also has been illustrated in the two cases just now, where it provides that mere words of threat is sufficient to prove the offence of criminal intimidation. So as a conclusion for the first question, all the three requirements to prove criminal intimidation against Azhar have been met by the prosecution. So the prosecution can prove a prima facie case against Azhar for criminal intimidation and shall be punished under section 506 of the Penal Code. So that's all for the first question.
Okay, proceed. Next presenter.
So I will continue to the question 2. Yes. The question 2 is about what are the evidences to support prosecution case against Azhar. So the issue in this case is that whether the prosecution can adduce the CCTV footage as a piece of evidence. So in this case, we refer to section 3 of the Evidence Act 1950 that stated on the evidence also includes the electronic means, also include the CCTV, which is the computer generated document. Section 62 explanation document produced by a computer is primary evidence. Can you hear? Next, section 90A of the Evidence Act 1950. In any criminal or civil proceeding, a document produced by a computer or a statement contained in such document shall be admissible as evidence or of any fact stated therein if the document was produced by the computer in the course of its ordinary use, whether or not the person tendering the same is the maker of such document or statement. Also stated in section 19B of the Evidence Act that for the weight to be attached to the relevant computer evidence whereby the court may draw any reasonable inference from circumstances relating to the document or the statement, including the manner and purpose of its creation or its accuracy or otherwise. Further, section 90C of the Evidence Act stated that section 90A and 90B shall prevail and have full force and effect notwithstanding anything inconsistent. Next, referring to the case of Muhammad Abdul Aziz Ibrahim and against public prosecutor, CCTV footage is held to be inadmissible unless it accompanied with a certificate or oral testimony. Also in the case of public prosecutor against Yusniza binti Mahmud, the court held that the image of the accused at the bank premise were captured by several CCTVs at the premise. So this image, when it were printed, the accused was clearly seen in this photograph. So the witness also positively identified the accused from the photograph which had been printed. Therefore, the evidence of photograph taken from the CCTV required additional compliance for it. So from this, we can see that the CCTV footage can be used as an evidence to support the prosecution case, and the court must use the CCTV footage with the caution as there is possibility of it being fabricated. However, such CCTV footage must also be corroborated by certificate or oral testimony by yes. In the meantime, it's also regarding the first, it is a written document prepared by the police when they receive information about a commission of an offense. It is generally a complaint that had been lodged by the victim to the police officer or by someone on his behalf. In a criminal proceeding, the first information report is normally can be said as normally relevant and admissible, but it is also subject to the makers being made available for cross-examination. Referring to the case of Sina Karapan against public prosecutor, the court held that the omission of the accused name in the police report by the witness does not in any way detract from the weight of the complainant himself. So by applying to this case, the usage of the CCTV, since it is for the ordinary purpose of setting CCTV is for recording the footage around the house, Archer can bring the CCTV footage as the evidence before the court. And the CCTV footage may be corroborated with the first information report given by Achong on the incident which had happened between Achong and Azhar. Next, my partner will continue.
Hello. Okay, so the next issue is whether the prosecution can rely on circumstantial evidence to support prosecution case against Azhar. So the next evidence we use is the circumstantial evidence, which is circumstantial evidence is an indirect evidence that demonstrates the spatial relationship between suspects, victims, timelines, and the criminal event. So these relationships can sometimes demonstrate that an accused person had a combination of intent, motive, opportunity, and the means to commit the offense, which are all meaningful features of criminal conduct. To support this, we refer to Section 5 of the Evidence Act 1950 that shows that the evidence can be brought if the fact is relevant to the issue. So, however, it must be noted that when the circumstantial evidence is used, the prosecution need to prove is beyond to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. In the case of Sunny Eng against PP, the court stated that although there is no direct evidence, the circumstantial evidence adduced by the prosecution was convincing. Therefore, the court held that the appellant murdered the deceased. And in the case of R against Hodge, the court held that where there is a purely circumstantial evidence, the court must satisfy that the case against the accused is beyond reasonable doubt. And lastly, in the case of Juraimi bin Hussein against PP, the circumstantial evidence must irresistibly lead to a conclusion that the accused had committed that offences and it is beyond reasonable doubt. To apply to this case, we can see that in this case, Ah Chong and Azhar has been in a bad relationship since they living next to each other for 10 years. Therefore, as they are in bad relationship, we can conclude that there is a motive and intention of Azhar to commit the offences. Therefore, we believe that the prosecution can use the circumstantial evidence to support the case against Azhar.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Rafika. So I proceed on question 3, which is what are the defense that can be raised by Azhar? So the issue that we raise is whether there is a possible defense that can be raised by Azhar. Next. So first of all, we want to discuss on the failure to prove prima facie case. So we refer to the case of Chua Siu Lin against public prosecutor, where in this case it mentioned on the substantial elements to prove the intimidation, i.e. there are two, mens rea, i.e. the intention to do intimidation, and also accessories, i.e. there must be a threat to injure a person. Next. So what is the intention to do criminal intimidation? It is that there must be an intention on part of the accused, i.e. in this case Azhar, to influence the mind of the victim, which is Ah Chong, either to cause alarm or to cause him to do any act that he is not bound to do, or to omit any act that he is entitled to do. Next slide. So in the case of Lee Yok Chong against public prosecutor, it was held in this case that the significance of the offense of criminal intimidation lies in the intention of the threat, not its effect. However, it must be noted that in this case also, there are cases where the court has decided to consider the capability of the accused to carry out the threat and consider whether the threat has caused the victim to alarm, to feel fear. Next. So to apply in the first element, applying to the situation, it can be said that there is no intention on part of Azhar to influence the mind of Ah Chong, either to cause alarm or to cause him to do any act that he is not bound to do. It is because Azhar has no intention to cause alarm to Ah Chong, because we argue that it is merely an empty talk, which is it was triggered by the earlier verbal argument. Azhar's words only indicates that he won't give in during the argument. Therefore, there is no intention behind those words, i.e. the words uttered by Azhar, to strike reasonable fear to Ah Chong for imminent harm. And by referring to the case of Lee Yok Chong against public prosecutor, it can be said that the act of Azhar by merely carrying cloth hanger and standing outside the fence of Ah Chong's house, it actually do not constitute that Azhar has the capability to carry out the threat uttered to Ah Chong. Thus, it is irrelevant for Ah Chong to say that Azhar has caused criminal intimidation towards him. So next, my partner will continue on the accessories.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nashada bint Sofiuddin. I will continue with the second element, which is the accessories. There must be a threat to injure a person. So there must be the existence of a threat done by the accused to cause injury to the victim, including on his reputation or his property or any person of whom the victim is interested of. Next. Okay, in this series, we referring to the case of Ramanathan Yogendran against public prosecutor, where the court held that in determining the offense of criminal intimidation, the court would be looking at the intention of the cause and the nature of the threat. Next. Another relevant case that we has been referred to in the case of Habibullah against State, where the court stated that the complainant, as a reasonable man, must feel that the accused was going to carry out his word into action. With that, it is important to consider whether the victim has reasonable ground to feel alarmed, even if he was never actually alarmed by it. Next. So by referring to these two cases, we apply. So for the first one, we apply according to the element that has been stated in the section 503 for criminal of intimidation. There is no existence of a threat done by the accused to cause injury to the victim, which is Achong in this case. Moreover, Achong has no reasonable ground to feel alarmed because Azhar, the accused, carrying clothes hanger only, and he was outside of Achong's house. And next, referring to the case of Ramanathan Yogendran against public prosecutor, the nature of threat is an essential element to prove criminal intimidation. However, in this instant case, Azhar's action by carrying clothes hanger while uttered the word blasa does not indicate his seriousness to carry out the threat at that time or in the near future. While in the case of Habibullah against State, the victim must have a reasonable fear towards the threat uttered. However, in this present case, the fact that Achong is a retired police officer does not fulfill the element, as he should not have a reasonable fear towards Azhar, who is just a government pensioner. Okay, next we move to the, we will discuss on the authenticity of CCTV as evidence. So we specifically refer to the section 90A, subsection 2 of the Evidence Act 1950, where this section stipulates in the course of its ordinary use. For the purpose of this section, it may be proved that document was produced by a computer in the course of its ordinary use by tendering to the court a certificate signed by a person. We refer to the case of Nana Segaran Pararaja Singham against public prosecutor, where this CCTV to be admissible as evidence if by giving oral evidence that it was so produced, by producing a certificate under subsection 2, which is the certificate of proof. Next. So to determine the admissibility or the authenticity of CCTV as an evidence, we refer to the case of Ahmad Najib bin Aris against public prosecutor, where the court held that the CCTV tapes were documents which produced by a computer by virtue of the definition ascribed to the words document and computer under section 3 of the Act. And the court held that since the CCTV tapes tendered by the prosecution did not satisfy the requirements of section 90A, therefore the CCTV were inadmissible as evidence. Next, we apply to this situation by referring to section 90A subsection 2. Where this section requires the CCTV evidence to be certified with the certificate of proof, where in this case, Chong failed to provide or obtain the certificate of proof to rely on this CCTV as evidence. Therefore, Chong cannot rely solely on the CCTV as evidence to implicate Azhar for criminal of intimidation. In addition, the CCTV tapes only captured the figure of Achong and Azhar, where it does not capture the word uttered and the voice was muted. Therefore, it is impossible to prove clearly that there is a threat towards Achong by specifically rely on this CCTV as evidence. Furthermore, the CCTV tape does not reveal that there is an attempt to carry out the threat, i.e. to injure Ah Chong by throwing the closest hanger towards him. Therefore, for the third question, we will move to the next question, question 4. Thank you.
Okay, we move to the next question is, if Azhar pleaded guilty to the charge, what are the relevant factors that can be used to mitigate the punishment? Okay, mitigation factors are known to be factors that will reduce the severity of the punishment. So we move to the first point, which is the employment history. Azhar has absence of bad reputation while working and never participated in any act that could tarnish the company reputation, hence proving Azhar responsible trait while working. And there is also absence of complaint that show traces of Azhar having attitude and etiquette issues while acting as government officials. As we know, government officials have strict rules that they need to abide by. So there isn't any proof provided that shows that Azhar had been dismissed by the officials. Okay, and then let's move on to the second point, which is the medical history and age, which is Azhar has the tendency on having deterioration on health and an increase in medical issue. So the act of proceeding with a long period of imprisonment will not be justified. This is because there is a need to cater with his health concerns. And then if we further sentence Azhar to be imprisoned, as the elderly, it shows that there is no empathy, even though that he should be free and live his life to the fullest, where in this case, it is a small criminal intimidation case. And each year of imprisonment constitutes a significant amount of the elderly remaining life expectancy. Hence, it is justifiable to use it as a mitigation factor. So let's move on to my partner.
Okay, so moving on to the another mitigating factors that can be considered is the attitude and behavior of Azhar. So based on the case, we can see that Azhar and Ashton have a strained relationship for over a decade. However, this is the first time Azhar was sued for his attitude. But throughout the 10-year span of Azhar and Achong being a neighbor, Azhar never received any complaint about his attitude or behaviors from other neighbors. So it indicates that the action of Azhar at that particular time was merely a moment of heat, not beyond than that. And the next point is the cooperation with authorities. So based on the fact of the case, Azhar had given a well cooperation with the police during the arrest procedure. And even though he was seen to be provocative on the CCTV, Azhar obeys the order given by the police to arrest him without any hesitation and refusal. So to conclude, based on the mitigation factors that have been laid out, it is justifiable to say that Azhar, it is possible to mitigate the punishment for Azhar. So that's all from us. Thank you.
Mabruk. Baguslah kumpulan ni. Very well organised. Presentation macam flow. Cantik. Tidak melalangat. Bagus. Tahniah daripada 3 kumpulan sebelum ni, saya rasa kumpulan ni yang saya tak ada tanya sangat. Sebab saya rasa memenuhi kehendak saya. Tahniah kumpulan ni. Tapi tak bermaksud you all imperfect. Tak perfect So basically like this Saya punya soalan mudah saja. Kenapa di awal tadi you kata pihak pendakwaan berjaya membuktikan prima facie case, sedangkan di penghujung akhir you mengatakan bahawa CCTV footage tu sukar untuk dibuktikan kalau tak ada sebarang sertifikat daripada pihak berkuasa, sebagai contoh expert ke, biasanya forensik tak ada pula soalan mengatakan bahawa kalau CCTV itu tak boleh rakam suara, Tak boleh rakam suara. Jadi kalau tak ada rakam suara, macam mana boleh dapat sentence tu aku belasah tu? Daripada Acong. Acong ada pengalaman silam yang tak bagus dengan Azhar. Hubungan tak baik. Mungkin dia ada niat yang tidak baik. Dia saja mereka-reka cerita. So you all kurang analytical thinking dan juga creativity sedikit kumpulan ni ya. Okay. So ada apa soalan nak tanya saya?
Tuan, saya nak bagi clarification sikit tentang yang soalan first dengan 2 tu pihak prosecution yang buat, yang soalan 3 dengan 4 tu defense buat. So meaning yang tadi pasal CCTV tu macam defense dia orang untuk cakap yang CCTV tu inadmissible to record.
Saya faham.
Okay.
Faham.
Okay.
Saya faham. Tapi kurang creativity dan juga kurang analytical thinking.
Okay.
Maksud kurang creativity, you all hanya berdasarkan kepada soalan yang dinyatakan dalam tulisan yang saya bagi itu. Itu saja. So sebagai peguam ataupun pihak pendakwaan, you all kena perkemaskan lagi, kembangkan lagi dengan merujuk kepada reported cases. Ya. Okay, siapa jawab ni? Izzah.
Saya. Okay,
Izzah. Okay.
Saya tuan.
Lagi? Itu clarification ya, bukan soalan. Ada soalan lain? Tim ni kata dia hanya kena bawah first lim section 506 ya, iaitu pemenjaraan 2 tahun ataupun denda. Betul Pasukan pendakwaan?
Ini betul.
Betul ya?
Betul.
Aku belasah kau tu tak termasuk di bawah section lim yang kedua. Ugutan yang boleh membawa kepada kecederaan. 506 Pandangan pasukan pendakwaan.
Saya rasa it is just a simple intimidation sebab si Azhar tu dia dikira orang tua lah correct. Sebab so dia tak able untuk carry out offense tu sampai grievous hurt or death.
Ya ke? Dia orang tua yang sihat, dia tak ada pula fakta mengatakan dia orang tua yang cacat ke, ada sakit ke. Yang soalan saya merujuk kepada perkataan belasah tadi. Aku belasah kau tu. Belasah itu adakah cukup hanya bawah lim 1 ataupun boleh dimasukkan kepada lim kedua? Yang mana lim kedua dalam section 506 tu boleh kena penjara 7 tahun. Sebab lim kedua tu katakan bahawa kalau menyebabkan kematian atau cedera parah, ugutan yang hendak menyebabkan kematian ataupun cedera parah. So dalam kes ni, ugutan tadi tu, aku belasah kau tu, adakah dia boleh menyebabkan kematian ataupun cedera parah? Boleh tak masuk dalam lim kedua? Pasukan pendakwaan, pembelaan pun kalau boleh bantu. Tim ni, kenapa diam ni? Hello?
Boleh kot.
Boleh kod?
Kalau menurut saya daripada kalau macam belasah tu tadi membawa kepada kematian yang memang serius, boleh untuk lim kedua yang boleh extend to 7 years.
Okay.
Kalau interpret belasah tu yang boleh membawa kepada something yang injury yang serius and ada offense to punishment with death, boleh untuk Azhar di bawah, di charge bawah offense yang lim kedua 503. 506.
Apa ayat kalau nak kata kata dia ni boleh dimasukkan dalam lim kedua tu? Boleh tak ada ayat-ayat tambahan ataupun ada perkataan tambahan yang dimasukkan? Contoh.
Belasah sampai mati.
Okey. Lagi?
Belasah dengan teruk.
Okey. Lagi apa? Aku belasah kau sampai patah kan, sampai pecah mulut kau kan. Itu that kind of word tu, statement tu boleh fall under second limb. Tapi memandangkan dia hanya berhenti setakat aku belasah kau. So that's why kita biasanya kalau pihak pendakwaan dia ambil langkah berhati-hati, dia ambil yang paling minimum ataupun yang first limb tadi minimum. So easy to prove. Okey. Ada apa-apa lagi nak tanya kepada saya? Ada masa berbaki lebih kurang berapa minit ni? 10 minit lah. Ada apa tanya? Kalau tak ada, kita tamatkanlah kelas kita pada malam ni. Ali tak ada ni?
Tak ada tuan.
Ya ada tuan.
Tak ada ya? Okey. Tahniah.